Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. LSU beat reporter for The Advocate talking some football. Wilson, how are you?
Doing well, Hunt. How are you this afternoon?
Doing quite well. I want to get to some of the football that y'all saw on Saturday, but one of the quotes that Brian Kelly had in the press conference that followed was interesting to me on a couple of levels, and that was when he was talking about Trey Holly's status and suggested that there could be a resolution in April and that they would advocate for him and welcome him back. That just seems really quick and seemed really optimistic in what's a really awful situation.
It is a little bit optimistic. This is where the situation stands. As I think folks know, the grand jury rejected the charge that had been brought against him of attempted second-degree murder, and so now he just faces the one charge, the felony count of essentially illegal discharge of a weapon. The exact terminology is giving me at the moment, but that's essentially what it is. And so he still has to go through a legal process here. I think maybe what Kelly's referring to is that Holly's attorney, Mike Small, told me, I guess it was on Friday, that Holly's arraignment is set for April 17th. And so that's just kind of the next step in the legal process. From what has been communicated to LSU, though, as based on what Brian Kelly said, is that maybe it could be resolved around that time. However, Small did note that he was going to have to ask to move that arraignment date because of scheduling conflict. So, if this all goes to a point where all the charges are dropped and Holly gets cleared through the legal process, then at that time, he will be able to apply for reinstatement back basically onto LSU's football team and, go through that process. The team will welcome him back. I don't think there will be any hang-ups in that process if he's legally cleared, in which case he'll be able to rejoin the team. And so the team has some optimism that he'll be a part of it probably sometime this summer during workouts.
Do you think LSU is going to add a running back in the spring transfer portal window?
It probably kind of depends on Holly's status. If they continue to get, sort of a positive momentum toward getting him back, in which case he then have 4 running backs for this season on a roster that is already over the scholarship limit, then they might just stick at 4. But it also kind of depends on, if there's a little bit more attrition coming out of the spring, ball here in a couple of weeks when the portal opens, then perhaps they would look to add somebody else. But either way, it would probably be someone who would have a profile of maybe 1 year of eligibility left, 2 max, who can just take a couple carries here and there. It certainly wouldn't be like a star running back in most cases, because most likely anyway with Caleb and Caden Durham coming in and these guys in the future classes like Harlan Berry and such. So I think if Holly is available, they'll probably stick at 4. But, there is certainly a possibility that they look for another one in the portal window. But again, it kind of depends on what that roster number looks like, because you got to be at the 85-man limit come preseason practice.
You'll have had a couple of extended looks at practice, including on Saturday. What have you noticed from the running game?
Just how different it is schematically. Not so, and it's been successful too, which is, well, a product of LSU's defensive front not being very good, or is it really just highlighting the strength of this offensive line? We'll kind of have to see. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But that's the main takeaway is just how different LSU looks when it is running the football. It's more of a traditional attack. You're seeing counters. You're seeing pulling offensive tackles and guards. You're seeing toss plays. And then building off of that, play action rollouts that have been quite successful for them offensively, in those full team periods, because of when you're able to constantly pull the defense's eyes outside on a run, then, run that play action behind it, kind of bootleg has been quite good for them, especially I think Mason Taylor had a catch on that. Kyren Lacy had a catch on those plays in Saturday's practice. And so just time and again, it's not just like, vague off-season talk. It's not Les Miles saying they're going to open things up and then run toss dive. You can see it every day at practice. They are really implementing a new style to this running game.
I will never, ever, ever forget the first 3 plays that they ran in Lambeau Field after an entire offseason of thinking that LSU was going to modernize and change things, and they turned around and handed it to Leonard Fournette 3 straight times and punted when he had basically one functional ankle. That brings back bad memories. Let's talk about LSU.
I don't think you're going to have to deal with that this time. This is truly a different style of running game. We'll see whether or not it's successful, but the style of it is definitely going to look different.
What's your sense at how much they trust Caleb Jackson? We know that he didn't get a ton of touches last year, and the veterans kind of swallowed all those up.
Yeah, I think that they do trust him a good bit. They want to continue to see him get better this offseason. just be consistent in everything that he's doing. That's a word that LSU uses a lot for a lot of players, and it's certainly a priority for Brian Kelly and something that he values. And I think that's kind of it for Caleb, is just that they've seen what flashes of what he can do, and talent-wise, it's all there. It's just kind of putting it together, and having him sort of over time understand all the nuances of the offense, and kind of like in terms of pass protection and catching the ball out of the backfield. It's not like in the limited viewings that we've had of him this spring, it's not like he's popped necessarily at those times, but we know what he can do. I don't think that's like really indicative of what he's going to do this fall. We continue to see Josh Williams get a lot of run with the first team as well. So it's probably at this point going to be set up where, Josh is getting a good bit of carries, but, Caleb is too, and they're going to rotate, that's most likely what it's going to be, especially to start the season. And so, I think that's just kind of where Caleb's at right now, is just kind of continuing to mold improve every part of his game so that he can have this breakout year two.
Chatting with Wilson Alexander, LSU beat reporter for The Advocate, covering the football squad. They got a chance to check out Saturday's workout on campus. Is there anything discernible in terms of the defense that you felt was noteworthy when y'all were out there on Saturday?
Well, they had a few moments here and there. It's not like they've just been getting run over completely all the time when we have had open practices. But there's certainly still concerns with the run defense. I think in particular, there's moments this spring when the offensive line just seems to take over, and Caleb and Josh have some pretty big holes that they're able to run through. But there's also been some moments where the defense on Saturday was able to create a little bit of pressure, and affect Garrett Nussmeier on a few plays. Got after Ricky Collins a little bit when they kind of left in the first team, or not necessarily the first team, but some of those rotational players on the defensive line. And, right at the end of practice on Saturday, kind of forced what would have been a 3-and-out, brought some pressure. And one way they've been doing that is, we were able to get a glimpse of their third down packages on Saturday, and actually, having all on the field at one time, Paris Sand and Harold Perkins and Braden Swinson and Deshaun Womack, and using Paris and Braden Swinson kind of rushing inside on that third down package is something that, and Harold on the edge, which I think people will kind of be music to their ears. We did get a glimpse of that, and so that's been discernible to this point.
Any Deshaun Womack buzz? Obviously a 5-star player who played sparingly as a freshman, but hopefully looking for a jump here in year two.
A little bit. He's getting a lot more reps than he did at this time last year. He looks a little bit more comfortable in the defense than he did. Obviously, this time last year, what am I saying? He wasn't even really fully practicing because he had off-season surgery. But even compared to fall camp last year, just sort of seems to be like he's grown into his body a little bit more. There was times last year in fall camp when he was getting flung around like a rag doll by Emory Jones and Will Campbell, just because he was still kind of needing to work on his technique, and he didn't have the size in his frame just yet. And that seems to be kind of coming along. Braden Swinson's still probably going to be that starter at that sort of smaller defensive end spot, which is kind of where the Jacks used to be. But Deshaun is kind of right there, and he's been in the rotation quite a bit.
Let's switch back to the offense here in a couple more minutes of your time. We really appreciate it. Kyren Lacy is a guy that Brian Kelly talked about on Saturday. Are you prepared to see him be this team's leading receiver?
Yes, I am at this point, certainly. Kyren has been probably the most impressive player on the field this spring. He is the one who, when you're talking about highlight plays from practice, he's the one who's usually made them to this point. Haven't noticed any drops from him, which was obviously kind of the concern more early last year and during his first season at LSU. He's just been consistent, play after play. He's kind of the guy that they seem to go to when they need a play. He's really, really standing out, and looks like a kind of, when he came back this season, you wanted to see him try to make that leap to be wide receiver one and try to emulate what Malik and Brian Thomas did last year in some ways, and kind of, make that jump and assert himself. And he truly has to this point. He's been kind of, as Brian Kelly said, set the standard for everybody else. He's been incredibly consistent in his practice habits, in terms of improving his practice habits has really paid off and influenced his game. And when Brian Kelly is saying in the spring he's going to have a breakout season, we'll have to see how it all looks as it plays out. But I think it's just really encouraging for what they expect of him going into this year.
Next,
Chris Hilton would probably be next right after Lacy. He's had a consistent spring as well from everything we've heard. He's healthy, for the first time kind of in a while, whereas, last year he was healthier than he had been the first two seasons of his career, and he's just continued to kind of be healthy. He's making plays. He's fast, obviously able to finally kind of use all those traits that look so promising coming out of high school It seems like he's really putting them together. He's had a strong spring, and especially as Xavier Thomas and C.J. Daniels continue to learn the offense. Kyren and Chris are, C.J. and Xavier haven't necessarily been like stand-up players because they are still learning that offense. But like Joe Sloan said last week, come fall camp, he expects them to maybe be bigger pieces of what they're doing. We're already seeing them get into the rotation a little bit more on Saturday compared to where they were a few weeks ago. But in terms of like who's number 2 right now, I'd say Chris Hilton.
Yeah, Scott Rabelais didn't think the spring game's very important. He's taking his annual jaunt over to Augusta. Is he bringing you anything back from the merchandise shop?
I don't think he is this year, but that's because my in-laws are going to Masters, and so they already asked me what my shirt size is. So I think that I might be getting a shirt or two. Yeah.
Excellent to hear. Well, we'll see you up there in Tiger Stadium on Saturday. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the time, y'all. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.